3 weeks before Carl Jung died, he wrote something in a private letter that contradicted everything modern psychology teaches. For decades, people asked him the same question. Do you believe in God? He would smile and answer, I do not believe, I know. What did he mean? In that final letter, Jung wrote, God is not a belief. It is a psychological fact. I have seen it in every dying patient I studied, and now I'm about to meet it. This was not faith. This was observation, data collected across decades of clinical work. Jung spent years analyzing people in their final days, watching their dreams transform, documenting the symbols that surfaced as death approached. And what he found changes everything. We think we know about consciousness. If you've ever wondered what happens at the end, drop the word consciousness in the comments. Let's see who's ready for this. Part 1. The inversion. Before Jung died, he made one final observation that inverted the entire framework of modern psychology. He said, we do not have a soul. We are souls who happen to have bodies. This was not poetry. This was a conclusion drawn from decades of clinical research studying one specific psychological pattern he found in every single person approaching death. Jung worked with terminally ill patients, not to comfort them, but to study them. He wanted to know what happens to the psyche when the body begins to fail. And what he discovered was this. As people moved closer to death, their dreams changed completely. The ego, the part of us concerned with reputation, success, identity, began to fade from their dreams. And something else emerged, symbols of wholeness, mandalas, circles, images of completion. Jung called this the self, the deeper, eternal aspect of consciousness that exists beyond the individual personality. And here's what unsettled him. These symbols did not appear randomly. They appeared in a specific sequence, as if the psyche, sensing death, was preparing for a transformation, not an ending, but a return. Jung documented this in memories, dreams, reflections. He wrote about patients who, in their final weeks, stopped fearing death, not because they found religion, but because their unconscious revealed something to them. A vision, a knowing, that the small self, the one they had defended their entire lives, was just a temporary structure, and beneath it, waiting, was something that had always been there. Something that did not die. Jung called it the self, capital S, the eternal core of consciousness. The part of you that exists before birth and continues after death. If you've ever felt like there's a deeper part of you that your daily life doesn't touch, drop self below. Part 2. The death preparation process. Jung discovered something remarkable in the dreams of dying patients, a pattern so consistent he could predict when someone was within months of death just by analyzing their dreams. He called it the death preparation process, and it had 4 stages. Stage 1. The journey begins. The person begins dreaming about journeys, long roads, distant lands, crossing rivers, climbing mountains. The unconscious is preparing them for transition, showing them symbolically that something is ending and something else is beginning. Stage 2. The guides appear. Animals appear, wise old figures. Jung called these archetypes, universal symbols present in every culture. The wise old man, the great mother, the shadow. When these figures appeared repeatedly, Jung knew the person was being guided, not by their conscious mind, but by the self. Stage 3. The luminous dreams. The dreams become filled with light, golden fields, glowing cities, radiant figures. Patients would wake in tears, not from sadness, but because the dreams felt more real than waking life. Jung wrote, it is as if the unconscious is showing them their true home, the place they came from, the place they are returning to. Stage 4. The dissolution. The person stops dreaming about themselves. Their individual identity fades. They begin dreaming in symbols of unity, circles, mandalas, spirals. The ego dissolves, and what remains is pure consciousness, no longer personal, but universal. This was not imagination. This was data. Jung documented this process in hundreds of patients across different cultures, religions, and belief systems. The pattern was always the same. But here's what shook Jung. This process didn't only happen to the dying. It happened to anyone who went deep enough into their own unconscious through meditation, analysis, or what Jung called active imagination. People who had never been close to death began having the same dreams, the same symbols, the same journey. Jung realized, this is not about dying, this is about awakening. Have you ever had a dream that felt more real than your waking life? Drop luminous if yes. Part 3. Consciousness doesn't end. In his last interview, weeks before his death, Jung was asked, "What do you think happens when we die?" He paused, looked out the window, and said something that left the interviewer speechless. "I do not think. I have seen." The interviewer pressed. "Seen what?" Jung smiled. "That consciousness is not produced by the brain. The brain is produced by consciousness." This was not philosophy. This was the conclusion of a man who spent his entire life studying the mind. Jung studied near-death experiences long before they became popular. He interviewed patients declared clinically dead who came back. And every single one described the same thing: a light, a sense of peace, and the unmistakable feeling that they were returning home. Not going somewhere new, but returning as if they had been there before. Jung wrote in his private journals, "The unconscious knows, it remembers. What we call birth is actually forgetting, and what we call death is remembering." Think about that. What if you're not learning who you are, but remembering? What if the self, the eternal part of you, has always known? And this entire life, every struggle, every question, every moment of confusion, is just the process of waking back up. Jung believed the ego is necessary for survival, for navigating the world. But it was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be a stage, a childhood, and individuation. The process of integrating the unconscious is the maturation, the moment when you stop identifying with the small self and recognize what you've always been. The self, infinite, eternal, whole. If this is resonating, drop remembering below. Part 4. The tragedy of waiting. But here's the tragedy, Jung observed. Most people never make that shift. They spend their entire lives defending the ego, building it up, protecting it, terrified of anything that threatens it. And then, at the very end, when death comes, the ego dissolves anyway. And they finally see. Too late to live from it, too late to embody it, too late to do anything except let go. Jung's final message was urgent, not because he feared death, but because he saw what most people miss, the opportunity to wake up before it's over, to meet the self while you still have time, to stop defending the mask and start living as what you actually are. He said, "The greatest tragedy is not death, it is living your entire life as someone you are not." In his final days, Jung was not afraid. He had done the work. He had met the self. He knew with absolute certainty that the part of him that mattered would not die, could not die, because it had never been born. It was eternal, and it was waiting patiently for the temporary structure called Carl Jung to finally dissolve, so the self could return to where it had always been. Part 5. The Path Inward. So what does this mean for you, right now, today, while you're still alive? Jung's final discovery wasn't just about death. It was an instruction, a map for how to live. He said, "The self cannot be found by looking outward. It reveals itself only when you turn inward." And the process, what Jung called individuation, is not complicated. It's simply this: stop running from yourself. Stop hiding behind roles. Stop pretending you are the mask you wear for the world, and start asking the one question most people avoid their entire lives. Who am I when no one is watching? Not who you think you should be, not who your parents wanted, not who society expects, but who you actually are beneath all of that. Jung said most people are terrified of this question because answering it means facing the shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected, the emotions you buried, the desires you denied, the truth you've been running from. But here's what Jung discovered. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the doorway to the self. Because you cannot become whole by only accepting the parts of yourself you like. You become whole by integrating everything, the light and the dark, the strength and the weakness, the beauty and the ugliness. All of it. And when you do, when you stop projecting yourself, something shifts. The ego, the small frightened self, begins to relax because it no longer has to defend anything. And beneath it, the self emerges. Calm, certain, unshakable. If you're ready to stop defending the mask and meet who you actually are, drop inward. Conclusion. Carl Jung spent 85 years preparing for one moment, the moment when the ego dissolved and the self remained. And when that moment came, on June 6, 1961, he was ready. Not because he believed something, but because he knew. And his final message to you, to anyone still alive, still searching, is this. Do not wait. Do not spend your entire life defending a self that was never real. Turn inward, face the shadow, integrate the unconscious, and meet the part of you that has been waiting your entire life to finally be seen. Because when you do, you'll realize what Jung realized. You are not a body with a soul. You are a soul who happens to have a body, and when the body falls away, you don't disappear. You return to what you've always been, eternal, whole, free. Jung's final words, whispered to a close friend just days before he died, were these. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. He wasn't talking about external life. He was talking about the inner journey, the one that leads you through the shadow, through the fear, through the dissolution of everything you thought you were, to the self. And once you arrive, you realize you were never lost. You were always here. You just forgot. And this entire life, every struggle, every question, every moment of confusion, was just the process of remembering. If this message reached you at this exact moment, Jung would say, it's not random. It's synchronicity, the way the unconscious speaks. Drop one word in the comments. Awake, ready, remembering, beginning, here, whatever feels true. Your word matters because it marks the moment when you stopped running and started walking toward yourself. Thank you for being here. Jung would have wanted you to know you are not alone. The self has been waiting for you your entire life.